Hey people, I'm going to start this off with a true story that I don't think I've ever told anybody before. Back in around 1990-91, Hurricane Andrew hit Miami and devastated. And I was down there working, and I'd been out of weed for a while. So after work, me and my buddy went drinking and searching. And sure enough, we've run into a sack. And we had all the boss man's tools in the back of his truck. And there was a 10 o'clock curfew, and we didn't quite meet it. We got caught on the road, and us and a bunch of other contractors. And so the military police give us a legal pat down, just searching for weapons, and put us in them plastic cuffs. And luckily they put mine on way too tight, and I got them to loosen them up. And they loosened them up enough that I could get out of them. And so the state police, the sheriff come, and they stuck us all in a big van. And I remembered, shit, I got that weed in my pocket. It's going to be another charge. And so, lucky at the time I was young and had a butt fatuation. And so I was reading up on it in my Playboy about this girl who put some packages up in there. So I don't recommend ever doing this, but I stash my drugs in my ass. I'm a full-fledged faggot now. But yeah, that's known as the Lord's hiding spot. I didn't make this up. This is all just roads that the Lord has sent me down so I could better understand these writings. But yeah, that's what Zaphan is, the butt, and Yah is the Lord, to butt you. And that's where I've been reading in Zephaniah. And a German pronunciation of that is Zaphani, to fanny ya. And that's what it's said, Yahweh, the Lord, and has hidden. The Lord is this Yah part in your fanny. Yahweh hides. And so as I've been telling you, though, the word Yahweh in the Bible, it means a man that understands how to read is you. If you're reading it, when it says Yahweh, it's talking about you. A man that knows, a learned man is Yahweh. And so, in the fanny of you, if you understand what this says. And they say this book was written during the famine of King Joseph. And so they'll try to say this all kind of nice ways. When Jacob robbed Laban and took off, and Laban come looking for his idols, and he was searching, and now Rachel had taken the images and put them in the camel's furniture. The camel's furniture is a code word for your ass. The camel's furniture is, you sit on the camel, sat upon them, in the camel's furniture and sat upon them. And Laban searched the tent, but didn't find them. And you can see this word for, search the tent in the Hebrew. It's whom asses. Whom, Y, W-Y is who, M, whom, and asses. Y-M, asses. Asses is the base word for this search. When they try to force the words off, now Rachel had taken the household idols and put them in saddle of camel and sat on them. And searched, and whom asses loving. And addle a col and backward E, coli, and then A-E is E-S, a colis. It's a poet word, the colon and the police. And so the L-E and then the A-E becomes the E-S, the colon lease, the colis. Everything having to do with your colon. And where a colon bends is a colic. A colic is a bend of a colon. The left and right colic. The colic, when your horse colics, got a bend in his stomach holding back food. The colon. And at the end of the colon, this is where the colis is, what polices the colon. You got to go through the colis before you get out. It gets released through the colis. Stuck it up there in the colon. And, that's where your word colon and semicolon. A colon used to be the period, it's the end. It stuck it in the end, in the rectum end, the colon. the ass end. The coal in the ancient word, it means the ass end. And so, where she had taken and hidden the idols is where hell, where hell love he at. And then backwards, my fart, it, rip 'em. He goes looking in there, and I'll rip a fart on him. Where hell have he at, my fart, it, rip 'em. What's 'em from? 2 M's. What's 'em from? In Crag. In Cragamalutsin. In Cragamalutsin. He ain't going up in my Cragamalutum. My Cragamalutsum in Holium. Whom asses lovin' addle collises of Willamits. So lovin' was a freak, and so it means a lot of things. It just means lovin', and all the things he's lovin', it would be the words around it. Whom asses lovin' addle the collises of Willamits will come out. Loving it to look all lease well massa, but not did find them. She's standing there with her hands on her hips after you done looked all up in there. Well, massa, what you got to say for yourself? You ain't found nothing. But yeah, that's the Lord's hiding spot, is up in your colon. So I have felt the need to tell you that because, that last movie I read just the letters, and I read the upper marks. I told you I was going to read the lower marks here. But, this is in the time of the famine. And that's what this word down here, means. And it's where your word, rabbits come from. And it's, when you're reading it with the lower markings, it's who rove, R-O-A-V-I-T-S, who rovits. And that's where your word rabbits are coming from. When it comes down to times of famine, everybody's roving around looking on the ground for something to eat. If you see the rabbits eating something, that's a good sign that you can eat that. You see it in this word they say is famine, is R-O-V, to rove with just the letters. And how they rove in arts. And in this time, this is when they found many of the drugs, many of the plants that they get high off of. They have visions. And that's in this word, yasa. And it reads backwards, the laws, the laws call, and asu. Asu is ancient word for an herbal doctor, one that was skilled in herbs. Shipu would check your stars and say some prayers for you. And Asu, he would find some herbs and stick them up your ass, the Asu. He was the original Hebrew. He's brewing some stuff up. The Asu, the old doctor. So I read this line with just the letters yesterday, and I read it with the upper markings. But you're actually supposed to read it with the lower markings the second time around. And that's why this line, it doesn't change. It doesn't have any upper markings. And so it stays the same in the first and the third reading. And it changes in the middle with the lower markings. So with just the letters, it was so writ is, so it is writ, the rule laws of Yasa, what you shall do. Of level of rub did brew. The rub did a brew. To cook one up. The cause in will, or the cause bull, is a legal document, a sealed legal document, a bull. Coming from Latin, it's the medication package insert that provides information about a drug and its use. And the cause bull, ask my massa of Pium. The legal papers to ask my massa to in Pium, to read them. The lesson to trim it, to give them. Cut it short so we can understand what that says. The hieroglyphs, the writings, were bits of vein, and get rid of all the little vein parts, from her hand. to much rid, to get rid of all little bits of vein. And so Massa says, and Massa is just reading this, except he's using all these lower marks, ignoring the upper marks. He's just reading all these lower vowel points. It's got a ton of them. A lot of them are doubled up with 2 marks. And some of them will have, 3 marks, 2 vowel points and a directional mark. And the bottom's loaded down with them. And so this is what Massa had to read for him. So let me just explain all these vowel points underneath here first. These 2 dots, this is an I. Underneath this A here is an E, and so the AE becomes the ES, the ash. The single dot is the A. The dash and dot is the OA. This is a vowel. The single dash is a O. And this is a G, and it means to eject this letter, to not read it when you're reading the lower markings. And then this angle here, this is apostrophe, and it does the same thing in the Greek, that you turn around, go the other way. So you read every letter twice when you see this. And this little mark down here, I don't know what to call it, but it just means after you read the word, come back and grab whatever group of letters that it's holding. It's holding this way here. And you see here, it's telling you to read just these letters again. These 3 dots here are H. And this is like the Vav, but it's the epsilon in the Greek, so it means it could be a U or a Y. And then the mark here again tells you to read these 3 letters twice. And so that's all the lower markings that's in here. So if you read one of them drug package inserts, and then imagine if the whole thing was in Latin, that's about how this writing is. Except what people don't know is Latin comes from the ancient English, comes from the ancient Teutonic. So this first word, this is size, S-I-E-S, and rate, R-A-I-T, size rate. And psi is the ancient word for perception. It was the name of the Egyptian god, the Saya. Gods are words. And a rate is an exposure. At what rate that it deteriorates, R-A-I-T, to expose. And so it's where your word size come from. If I show you a picture of something, if I show you a picture of a building, without something for perception, you don't know what size it is. You could be looking at a dollhouse and think it's a mansion. Perception and so the size, and it's also where your word see comes from, your perceptions, what you see. And so the size are rate, and then ratia, the IA. And that's the same in the Finnish or in the Greek, all comes from the same place. And atia, means it's a place, forms place names. And so you kind of just read this backwards, as in the place that expose perception. And then this is Psi, S-I-R-O-A, Syro. And it means small. It's a Syro, S-I-R-O-A, Finnish. A singular form of Syro. Petite, graceful, delicate, slender, small. It's a little more than 0, Syro. And then the AE becomes the ES. The small is of. This of here, that's coming from this L here. And the small is of. Size ratia, the small is of. Just a little bitty amount is what it says. And they'll often give this L, 2, and it's of or 2. And it's the 2, and then the VA, and then IO, the VAO. And VAO is the valley. It's the shaded place, down in the valley where the sun don't shine. And just a small amount to where the sun don't shine. And then the top O is of, and then YO, omit the S, and then U. And U, and then woo, W-O-O, woo, the one you seek, and to seek the favor. This dot in the Vav means 2 Vavs. Y-O-U and W-O-O, woo. And the V-I-L-O-A, and then an E. And so that's, the A-E becomes the E-S. So it's the Vilos, the Vilos. And you shall do unrighteousness is you woo, you seek out the favor of the Vilos. The Vallejo, the many spellings, Vilanus, coming from the farm worker. You seek out the farm worker. But this has become the villain, the Villejos, the villain, the Vilanus, the farm worker, with all these spellings, the Villos. And that's the spelling we had. We don't have a page on that, but it's the vile, the wicked person in a work of fiction. And shall do unrighteousness, and you woo the villain. And then why, who, how, and lay hand, two eyes. To lay hand, lay yod, and then underneath over, O-V-I-R. And who lay hand over, backwards after this apostrophe, in dire, in D-I-U-R, in dire need, in dire, and then back this way, of, in dire of, and causo in, the K-O-A-Z-O-A, kazoo, the wazoo, the wazoo, up your buttocks, the place of the cause too. And that zoo's coming from the Z-O-A, zoa, is the animal. That's the name of Eve in the Greek Bible, the animal, the zoa. And the causo in will, the cause of will, W-I-L, and then V-A-I-A, vaya. Vaya meaning whoa, 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 oh God. And then a M-O-A-X-E, moxie, the moxie. And as they first recorded use in 1930, it's a soft drink made since 1885, and possibly meaning dark water, nerve, spunk, strength, character, wits, smart, skill, know-how. Origin of this word as the name of a popular product marketed as a cure-all may help to understand the logic behind the plurality of its similar meanings. The word goes way back. The meanings can be grouped into cures for the problem of feeling too weak in spirit, body, or mind. And you woo the villo, who lay hand over bid your of, cause of, will via moxie, will woo moxie. And then the A, and come back and get this X, A, and so it's A-T-S-A, and at S-A-V-I, it's savvy, wise. And then the pay, P-A-Y, and each of them, pay each in file, P-I-E-L, the file, and then underneath the I-S and turn around, and file isle. And file isle is a little bitty island in England, but the file comes from fodder, to pay each in file, in fodder, which would be, what you pay your animals. And then I-S, in backwards, is of, and nuisant, N-U-S-U-N and T-O-R-Y, and is of nuisantary, a nuisance, and a nuisance and a tarry is the place that business goes on, and of nuisantary, and then M-A-Y, and may it cavy. And so this is the deceitful, the tongue deceitful for, this is to the rhyme of it. A cavy is an Indian poet, but to the nuisantary, may it cavy, is a cave, a cavity, and may it cavy, two E's, he, and then look, dot, you can't see there, the A-M, and then O-A-E, amos, A-M-O-E-S. and is of nucentary, may it cavy. He amos, Amoes, the amos, and then come back and get this Helma again. He amos, Helma, blood. He amos, bleed. And the jar you of, Jarryu, and come back and get the O-O-V. And the jar you of, who rovits of, you're searching around to the Roavits, the rovits, and vavav to a of, and rovits, and the jar you of, you're carrying around your jar, and you're roving around, looking on the ground is what you're looking for. The things you want are on the ground, and where rovits of, where bits, who, and why, who, how, who, and then es, ae is es, who is in, and then ain, who is inane, and much your avid, moch, the much, and underneath the YOR, and then the dots are that RAVID. And who rovits of, where bits, who is inane, much your avid. Inane, silly, stupid. Coming from the inanus, vain, empty. Coming from the same word, the vein. The vein. Who is inane, the much your avid. So if you missed that first movie in this series, you might not get the impact of this. But the Hebrew scholars, they don't know the meaning of most of these marks. They think it just has to do with the way you sing the verses. But they have no idea what most of these marks are. And so I just placed every mark in this line. I read it 3 times. The first time is just the letters and the dark directional marks up here. And then the second time is the one I just read here, is all these lower marks. And then the third time I read it in that movie yesterday is with the upper marks. But the first time is so is writ, is rule, the laws say, Ashu, the doctor of the level of rub did brew, of rub, the first in did brew. Cause or keys, KZ, and the keys of Bula, the writings that go with that medicine tell how it works, tell the dosage. The axe my massa, in pie them of lesson, trim it, give them the the hieroglyphs, the writings, whereof it's to vain much rid, to get rid of all the vainness and just tell me exactly what it means. And this kind of gives the meaning of what the hiero and hieroglyphs mean. And hiero means the meaning, and the glyph is the writing, and the glyph is the picture, and the hiero is the meaning of it. And then the second time, this is what it says. And the size ratia, the perception of the exposure place. The Syro, the small is of Veo, of the valley of you woo the villain. You go seeking the farmer, the villain, who lay hand over in dire of the Kazu, to give Azu, to give the Wazoo in. Will via moxie. At Savi pay eachum in file. Is of nucentary, may it cavy. The nucentary, may it cavy into the hole, into the cavy. He amos Helma, he amos the blood. And that's what it's doing, it's going to your blood system, to your ass. And jar you of, who rovits of, where bits, who is a name, much your avi. this is also where your frogs come from, the rivets. The rivets and the rabbits and the rovets. But if you go back and watch the other movie, I'll leave the link. I just put these two in this folder. This is all I'm going to do on this. And just watch the end of it where I read it the third time with the upper markings. And it kind of talks about, who comes, where the bits of vein from her hand. And it's talking about Freya, the god of death, freeze, destruction, Friday. And they try to leave a lot of that out, but that's where your word refrigerator comes from. It's cold, the winter's coming, Freya. And they try to put this all off like some fantasy, and people enjoy that. They like to think that the ancient people were dumb. But she was a god of love, beauty, fertility, sex, war, gold. And the magic, is the seether. That D here, some people read this as a D and some people read it as a TH. And it's the same. It's all the same language. And you can see it down here, by her husband, the odor, O-D-R. Freya, sweet little old Freya, and her husband, the odor, this big stinking one. If there's odor in the house, it's him. And it's the same place where your word other, your O-T-H-R, your other half, and when it, with the mark above it, same as in the Greek, you read it, the O-T-H-R and T-H-O, the other two, the husband. And so all the ancient civilizations, they all had these stories, and they all had this hidden information in the writings they put out there for everybody to see, but only some people understood what all these extra dots meant. And so all these old stories, they lasted forever because the dumber people, seeing that the smarter people are interested in these stories too. It's why they kept the Bible. It's why the Bible lived this long and nobody knows how to read it. The dumb people thought it was of value because smart people read it. And they try to feed us the image that we see in these pictures. But the images are all in the symbols that have a meaning, and the meanings will keep forever. When the writings change, the symbols still have the meanings. But yeah, it looked like Freya done boofed some shit over here. She kicked back high in the chair. You can see the old owl on her chair here, the long-eared owl. The same old burials in Egypt. It's all the same people. In the apple tree with the cat at her foot. In two columns, the keys, the cats, the two cats, her two cats. And it looks like Tayet, the same belt buckle as in Egypt. Alright, I'm going to cut this off here. Good day.